Hi, and welcome back to the Google Form series from start to finish. We've looked at quite a few things so far in this series, but now we are on to video 11. And in video 11, we are going to look at the settings of your Google Form before we get ready to send it out. So video 11 is on the way, but before we do that, let's take a brief look back at what we've covered so far in this video series. All right, if we take a look back at what we've done so far, we began with video 1, which was simply opening and naming a Google Form. Video 2, we took a look at the home screen and all the buttons that were there. In video 3, we added different question types. Video 4, we imported questions from previous forms. Video 5, we added titles and descriptions. In video 6, we added images. In video 7, we added videos. In video 8, we added sections. In video 9, we customized our Google Form. And in the last video, number 10, we simply practiced viewing our Google Form. That brings us now to video 11, which is, once again, looking at the settings of your Google Form and adjusting those before you get ready to send it out. So, with no further ado, here is video 11. Hello and welcome back to the Google Form from Start to Finish series. We are all the way out on video number 11, and in video number 11 we are going to look at the settings of your Google Form. So at this point in creating a form, you're almost to the finish line, but you want to make sure that your settings are correct before you do that. So I am looking at the same practice form that we've been using throughout these videos, and I'm going to go all the way over to the right here and what looks like a gearbox. I see settings, so I click on settings. Once you do that, you will see the settings appear. You have 3 tabs. You have General, Presentation, and Quizzes. So let's start with General. All right, so you have to think about the form that you created and all of the little details. So this first box here, collect email addresses. So once again, think about the form that you've asked people to submit. Do I want their email address? Do I need their email address? Sometimes if I don't collect it, the users are anonymous and they may feel more comfortable in giving you actual good feedback. So that is something that you may want to uncheck. Once again, it depends on the form, but I'm going to go ahead and put that back. Next is response receipts. Now, you can hover over this question and it simply tells you respondents receive a copy of their responses. So you have to stop and think, do I want them to get a receipt? Does it matter if I allow them to get a receipt? Once you decide that, you then have to decide, do I want them to have to request it, or do I want them to just always get a receipt every single time they fill out this form? So it really doesn't matter, that is up to you. But a couple things to think about on this top section. Down here, requires sign in. You got a couple check boxes. Now, this is probably going to be different depending upon where you work, but since I work in this school community, it is automatically set to restrict to users within this school community. So if I uncheck that, that means that anybody can submit this form. But if I check it back, and once again, just to see what the question states, if I hover over it, I should see, well, it actually takes me to a separate page. So allow external sharing with only trusted domains. So this is basically what I just described. So if you're allowing people outside of your workplace to take it, so you have to be careful about setting the right thing. I'm going to go ahead and keep it that way. Now, the last thing on the General tab is this checkbox here, limit to 1 response. It says respondents will be required to sign into Google. So limit to 1 response. You have to stop and think, what kind of form am I sending out? Here's an example of where you may want to limit it to 1 response. Let's say you're sending this out to all of your students and you're voting for Homecoming king and queen. Well, to be fair, you're not going to have a student submit 100 different responses. You're going to limit them to one response. There are many different situations where you want to limit them to one response, and there's many times where you may want them to give unlimited responses. So it just depends. You have to think about the form that you are sending out. So that is basically the general tab. Let's go to the next tab, which is presentation. Not as much in this tab, but basically presentation, show progress bar. What this means is if you have a longer form and you have multiple sections, the user will be able to see their progress. So they'll see, am I 25% completed with the form? Am I 75% completed with the form? Totally optional. You can check it if you want. If you don't, it's not the end of the world. Next checkbox, shuffle question order. Something to think about, probably pertaining to you don't want people cheating. So if you were to check that, it would then shuffle the questions the order that they are asked. Just depends, once again, on what you're doing. And the last checkbox, show link to submit another response. So the fact that I allowed them to give as many responses as possible and I didn't check this box, when I go to the presentation, it's going to be like that. So here's what I'm saying. Check this. I've now limited it to one response. If I go back to the presentation tab, this is no longer an option. So it just depends. I'm going to put it back the way it was. If I go back to this tab, and the last thing on the presentation tab, confirmation message. This is totally optional. This one is pre-recorded. Your response has been recorded. So Google has automatically put that in there. You can put anything you want. This basically lets the user know when they have submitted the form. You can put a paragraph, you can put a novel, you can put a sentence, you can put whatever you want. But that's where you let them know that they've successfully turned the form in. All right, the last tab is quizzes. So just like it sounds, do you want to make this a quiz? So as I've said over and over again, what type of form are you creating? So nothing is going to be there unless you turn it on. So once I turn it on, I can then assign point values to questions and allow auto grading. So to do that, I'm going to have to go back to my form and edit and assign points. And if I go down, you got some other quiz options. A locked mode on Chromebooks, that goes to security and cheating. It allows the students to just see the form or the quiz. They can't then go to Google Chrome or various other sites to try to locate answers to their quiz questions. And moving down on the quiz options, release grade, just like it sounds. When do you want the students to see their grade? Immediately after the submission or later after you've been able to review it? So it just depends. So on what the quiz is and how quickly you want your students to get that feedback, I would maybe leave it off. So it just depends. And finally, respondents can see. So all of these are automatically checked, but if you want the respondents to see the questions they missed, you can have that checked. If you want them to see the correct answers, you can do that. And if you want them to see the point values, you can check that too. You just got to be careful on this section as far as cheating, because if you're allowing students or users to see correct answers and not all classes have taken it, then there's a chance that students may talk and may provide their fellow students with some assistance. So going back to what we have at the top, I'm going to go ahead and turn that back off. And that is it. Basically, that's your settings. You have a lot to think about within the general tab, the presentation tab, and the quiz tab. Don't forget, once you've got all of that set, you want to make sure you come down here and hit save. Otherwise, you wasted all your time. So I'm going to go ahead and save. And that's it. I have adjusted the settings of my form. I'm getting closer and closer to sending it out. That concludes video 11 Stay tuned for video 12.